2020 model Dodge Ram pickup, 3500 diesel. We're replacing the heater core on this truck. I wanted to give you guys a heads up on what's involved in removing the dash assembly. There's three 13mm bolts right here. There's two 10mm bolts that hold this part of the dash onto this bracket. You have to remove the steering column. There's a total of four 13mm nuts that hold the steering assembly onto this bracket. There is a 13mm bolt that goes right here to the steering. And you have to unplug these connectors along with removing the little clips that are held onto the steering column. So basically, four 13mm bolts right here, a connector for the brake pedal sensor, and about 4 or 5 connectors that go to this assembly right here. You have to unhook the shifter cable. You have to remove it from here. The shifter cable stays in the truck. It's this one here. There's two 10mm bolts here at the bottom. Two, I believe one 10mm on the other side. One 10mm bolt right here on the passenger side. You have two 13mm bolts right here. You have to remove the plastic trim piece that goes right here. It has two 10mm bolts. At the top of the dash, you have to remove this plastic trim piece, and there are two 13mm bolts underneath them. You have to unhook all of the wiring that's part of the dash. That connector, this connector, the antenna connector. It's a total of 4 or 5 connectors here that need to be undone. This connector goes up right here, so that needs to be unplugged. On the driver's side, you have to unplug this connector that goes up, and then at the bottom you have to unplug these two, this one and this one, and you have to unplug that module. This one gets unplugged as well. And that basically frees up the dash and it's ready to be removed. Center console must be removed in order to unplug this connector right here. It goes up the middle of the dash. There's no way to remove it otherwise. Seats have to be removed. Center console must be removed, and this connector must be unplugged. That must be removed from that stud right there. And then the connector goes up under the carpet, and that releases the whole harness. This harness comes out with the dash. It runs under the carpet. So here we have the dash removed. The next step is to remove the HVAC box. I guess you could cheat a little bit and uncrimp these lines. Remove the one bolt that holds the line and squeeze the heater core out, and then when you install the new one, squeeze the lines again on the new one, but you run the risk of it leaking. So we're gonna not take that shortcut. We're gonna go ahead and remove the whole HVAC box and replace it the proper way. Most of the bolts that hold the HVAC box get unbolted or loosened from the engine compartment. So I'll show you that once we get it out. I'm gonna go ahead and show you guys the dash removed. So here we have the dash removed. We have the center console and the driver's seat. This truck, it's a hot shot truck, so the passenger side seat was already removed, but in order for you to get this piece out, you have to remove both seats. The one wire that comes down, this long wiring harness goes up the middle of the dash, and it forces you to remove the center console because all the wiring and connectors are underneath it. So unless you remove the center console and unplug all these wires, you won't be able to remove the dash completely. I guess you could lean it back and fight your way around it to remove the HVAC box, but I'm getting to an age where I can't maneuver my body in such a way, so we opted to just remove the whole dash out of it. On the driver's side, you have to remove all of these connectors. All of these go on the steering column, and then you have a large connector that's attached to the wiring for the dash. You have to unhook this one and this one right here. On the passenger side, you have a few more connectors. You have the connector for the antenna and a couple of large connectors that have to be unplugged. This blue one needs to be unplugged, and this one right here. There is a couple other connectors that need to be unhooked on the side. On the driver's side, I believe it's only one connector that needs to be unplugged. This module stays in place. You don't need to mess with it or unplug it. You have two 10mm bolts that attach this brace onto the bracket inside the cab. And then, like I said, on the steering column, it's 4 bolts. You have to unhook the connector for the brake pedal and these connectors right here. All of these go to the steering column. Other than that, it comes out pretty straightforward. It's time consuming. You have to be careful not to break any of the connectors so that when you go back together with it, everything clips back on. On the driver's side, now that we have everything removed, we have a good view of the 4 bolts that hold the steering column. This connector is the one that goes to the brake pedal. This is the connector that it's at the top. It goes up right here. It needs to be unplugged from the side. We're fighting the HVAC box to remove it. We're trying to find all the hidden bolts that hold it. Once we get it apart, I'll show you guys exactly what holds it in place, and we'll go ahead and replace the heater core. I had to source the heater core from the dealership. No other store carries it apparently. There is a wait time, 3-4 days to get it, so we just opted to get it from the dealership. It was roughly $165. On this center piece right here, there's a couple of screws, maybe 3 of them, that need to be unhooked in order to remove this piece. This plastic trim piece just clips out of it for the 4x4 if your truck happens to be 4x4. Those 2 connectors, the blue one and the black one, have to be undone prior to removing the dash. And then these are the 3 connectors that you have to unplug on the driver's side, along with this one at the top. On the driver's side, passenger side, this large one got unplugged. We unplugged this 2 right here. This one had to be unplugged as well. The blue one had to be unplugged at the top. I loosened this one just to give us some extra room. It has 2 10mm nuts on these 2 studs. This large connector fits, I imagine, the blower motor, perhaps, maybe not. Either way, we unplugged it. There's a ground right here that we unplugged. Left the nut in its place so that we don't misplace it. Once I get the HVAC box off, I'll go ahead and show you guys what holds it and where the bolts go. So here we have the HVAC box finally pulled out. There's a total of 4 studs that take 10mm headed nuts that hold it in place. This is the drain for the air conditioning. This is the expansion valve. This here is the location of the 2 lines for the heater core. These 4 bolts are a real pain in the ass to get to. I'm trying to understand what the manufacturer was thinking when they put them like that. I mean, I'm not here to argue about that. I'm here to fix it, but man, they could have put bolts in another way. Anyways, it's a total of 4 studs. This stud here is the one that holds the lines for the air conditioning. 4 bolts. Here we have the cab with the HVAC box removed. 1 stud goes through here. 1 stud goes through here. 1 stud goes through here. And the last one is this one here. Problem being accessing those nuts to remove the studs. Ridiculous accessing them. You can see the light. You can see the hole back there. That's one of them. There is a nut beneath the lines for the air conditioning, and there's another nut above it. And then there's another one behind the coolant reservoir. We had to remove the box for the battery, the air breather, filter housing. We loosened the inner fender. Very complex to get to those nuts for the studs. Now it's time to piece it all back together. Definitely a very involved job. Probably best to have a professional do it. It's just too much going on. So here we have the heater core going back into its place. Attaching one of the lines and the second line. The 2 clamps are kind of a pain in the ass to get to once it's installed. There is 1 bolt that holds it at the top with a bracket. I'll show that in just a minute. This here's that brace. It's loose. We haven't put it on just yet, but it holds the line along with the little screw so that it cannot move out of its place. Here's the old heater core. It was leaking profusely. All right. We have the dash situated back in its place. We're gonna go ahead and start connecting all of the connectors at the bottom, placing the bolts back where they belong, etc. So here we have the cable laid out. The one that goes in the middle of the dash. There's a ground right here. Yellow connector on this module. And this connector goes to the seat on the driver's side.